How the pursuit of pleasure can ruin our lives. Aldous Huxley's warning. Let me ask you a question that might disturb the very foundation of how you've been living your life. What if everything you've ever wanted, the comfort, the happiness, the pleasure, was actually the very thing preventing you from truly living? Now, that sounds counterintuitive, right? In a world where we're constantly told to chase our dreams, follow our bliss, and never settle for less than what makes us feel good, how could pleasure itself be the enemy? Aldous Huxley, the author of Brave New World, warned us of a future not dominated by pain or oppression like Orwell's 1984, but one drowned in pleasure, comfort, and distraction. And what's terrifying is that this isn't some distant dystopia anymore. It's here, it's now, it's us. We are living in the world that Huxley feared. A world where people no longer need to be controlled by force because they are willingly sedated by their own desires. And I need you to stick with me here, because what we're about to explore could shake your understanding of reality, meaning, and your purpose in life.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
We wake up and check our phones. Dopamine hit. We scroll. More dopamine. We eat what tastes good, not what nourishes us. We binge watch shows, not to learn or grow, but to escape. We swipe left or right, not to connect, but to feel desired. It never ends. And, here's the kicker, we think this is freedom. But what if it's actually slavery in disguise? What if the constant pursuit of pleasure is a cage made of velvet, and we're too numb to notice the bars? Huxley believed that when people are drugged by pleasure, they become passive. They stop questioning, they stop resisting, and most dangerously, they stop caring. If you're always chasing the next high, the next like, the next snack, the next show, the next validation, when do you ever stop to ask yourself why you're doing any of it? When do you stop and reflect on whether the life you are building is actually meaningful? Or are you just trying to feel good until you die? Imagine someone offering you a button. If you press it, you'll feel ecstasy forever. Endless pleasure. But all your memories, ambitions, relationships, and dreams will disappear. You'll feel amazing, but you'll be nobody. Would you press it? Think about it. Now ask yourself, aren't we already pressing that button in small ways every day? There's a reason we fear boredom so much. Boredom is the gateway to introspection, and introspection can lead to discomfort. But discomfort is the birthplace of growth, of wisdom, of deep connection. When we constantly run from discomfort, we run from ourselves, and we replace that self with a curated, stimulated, shallow version that performs happiness but never truly experiences it. Huxley wasn't just worried about drugs, like in Brave New World, he was worried about what he called soma, a metaphor for anything that numbs pain without solving it. Today, our soma is everywhere. Social media, junk food, porn, consumerism, constant entertainment. We keep ourselves sedated not because we're free, but because we're afraid. Afraid of suffering, afraid of depth, afraid of silence. But silence is where truth lives. Suffering is where meaning is born, and depth is where love, the real kind, begins to take root. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat alone in silence, without reaching for your phone, without music, without distraction, and just listened to your thoughts? When was the last time you allowed yourself to feel pain without trying to numb it? When did you last choose to do something hard, not because it felt good, but because it was right? Here's the paradox. The more we chase pleasure, the emptier we feel, like drinking salt water to quench thirst. Every moment of superficial satisfaction leaves us more hollow. Why? Because pleasure without purpose is anesthesia. It dulls the pain, but it also dulls the joy. We become emotionally flat. No highs, no lows, just a grey, buzzing numbness. Oh, but it's supposed to be the seasoning, not the main course. When pleasure becomes the goal instead of the byproduct of a meaningful life, we lose ourselves. We become addicts to comfort and slaves to stimulation. And the worst part, we call it happiness. The philosopher Viktor Frankl once wrote that happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. It's a side effect of a meaningful life, not the goal of one. When we make pleasure the goal, we sacrifice depth for dopamine, we trade real connection for validation, we replace selfhood with sensation. So I want to ask you, and I want you to really sit with this question, are you living, or are you just entertaining yourself until you die? The comfort trap, why a life without struggle becomes a life without meaning. We live in an age that worships comfort. We insulate ourselves from hardship like it's a disease, as if struggle were some kind of failure rather than a necessary part of life. But here's the paradox. Comfort, when pursued above all else, doesn't make us stronger, wiser, or even happier. It makes us fragile. And more importantly, it robs us of the very experiences that give life meaning. Think about it. When have you ever grown during times of ease? When have you ever truly discovered who you are while everything was going perfectly? The truth is, comfort zones are psychological coffins. They protect you from the chaos of the world, but they also entomb you in sameness. No challenge, no risk, no transformation, just repetition. And repetition without growth is stagnation. You might feel safe, but you aren't alive. You're just surviving under the illusion of living. And in that illusion, we become like the citizens in Brave New World, numb, passive, and easily controlled. They didn't need chains or prisons, they just needed comfort, distraction, and a steady dose of synthetic happiness. Sound familiar? Aldous Huxley's genius was in seeing that the real danger to human freedom wasn't tyranny, it was pleasure, not pain, but comfort, because we'll fight against oppression, but we'll surrender to seduction. We'll resist suffering, but we'll welcome numbness with open arms if it comes wrapped in convenience and pleasure. That's the trap. When we eliminate struggle from our lives, we also eliminate the conditions necessary for meaning to arise. Struggle is the crucible in which identity is forged. It's in the moments when we are tested, when the easy path is no longer available, that we are forced to ask ourselves who we really are. Let me ask you something deeply personal. What's the hardest thing you've ever gone through, and how did it change you? If you're like most people, those moments of pain, of fear, of uncertainty, they shaped you more than any vacation, any comfort, any fleeting pleasure. And yet we spend our lives trying to avoid those very moments. Why? Because we confuse pain with harm. But not all pain is harmful. Sometimes pain is the only thing that wakes us up. It's the call to adventure in the hero's journey. Without it, there is no story. Without it, we're not even characters, we're just spectators. Comfort is not evil, but it is a liar. It tells us we're okay when we're not. It tells us we're whole when we're actually drifting. It tells us we're living when we're just existing. And the more we buy into that lie, the harder it becomes to break free. Because comfort, like a drug, is addictive. The more we feed it, the more it owns us. We become afraid of discomfort, of challenge, of anything that might disrupt our carefully curated lives. And when that fear takes root, growth becomes impossible. You see, meaning isn't something given to us, it's something we earn. Through difficulty, through sacrifice, through facing the things we'd rather run from. A life without struggle is a life without story, and a life without a story? That's a life without direction, without depth, without dimension. We become flat like the people in Huxley's dystopia, technically alive, but spiritually vacant. But here's the good news. Struggle is not your enemy. It is your invitation. It's the universe saying, wake up. There's more to you than this. There's more to life than this. And when you stop avoiding discomfort, when you meet struggle head-on, something incredible happens. You grow. And not just in skill or knowledge, but in soul. You become someone who can carry weight, who can endure, who can lead, who can love deeply because you've suffered deeply. You become someone who is truly alive. So I want to ask you, what struggle are you avoiding right now that might actually be your path to meaning? What pain have you been numbing that might be the start of your transformation? What dream have you buried under comfort because you're afraid of the discomfort it would require? We think we want ease, but what we really want is purpose. And purpose only comes when we step outside the bubble of comfort and into the unknown. When we stop asking, how can I feel good, and start asking, what am I here to do? That's where life begins. The illusion of freedom, how pleasure becomes the new prison. We often tell ourselves that we're free. Free to choose, free to live, free to do whatever we want. But have you ever stopped to ask, what is the source of this freedom we claim to have? Because if your choices are being shaped, not by your higher values or deepest truths, but by fleeting pleasures and external stimuli, are you really free? Or are you just reacting? Responding to the world like a puppet whose strings are pulled by algorithms, advertisements, and appetites? Aldous Huxley foresaw a terrifying version of this in Brave New World, where people weren't forced into submission, they embraced it. They loved their chains because their chains were coated in sugar. The most powerful kind of prison is the one where the prisoner believes they are free. And what Huxley understood, in a way that feels prophetic now, is that pleasure can be more controlling than pain. Pain alerts us that something's wrong. It wakes us up. But pleasure? Pleasure can lull us into a dream so deep we forget we're asleep. Look around. We're flooded with options, with entertainment, with stimulation. You can scroll endlessly, shop instantly, swipe effortlessly. Everything is at your fingertips, except fulfillment. And here's the catch. The more choices you have, the more you feel in control. But if those choices are designed to keep you addicted, distracted, and passive, then your freedom is an illusion. You're not choosing, you're being chosen. Your attention is being harvested. Your desires are being shaped, and slowly, without realizing it, your will is being eroded. Freedom isn't the ability to do whatever you want in any given moment. That's impulse. That's chaos. True freedom is the ability to choose what is right, even when it's hard. It's the power to delay gratification in pursuit of something higher. But if you can't say no to your urges, if every time you feel bored you tap a screen, every time you feel lonely you seek fake intimacy, every time you feel anxious you numb out, then your freedom has already been sold, piece by piece, to the gods of convenience and consumption. Think about this. When was the last time you made a choice that was truly your own, not influenced by what's trending, not shaped by marketing, not driven by fear or comfort, but born from deep reflection and self-awareness? That kind of freedom is rare. It's costly. It requires discipline, awareness, intentionality, and it's uncomfortable. But it's also the only kind of freedom that leads to a life worth living. You see, pleasure isn't the enemy. It becomes the enemy only when it becomes the master. When we organize our lives around it, when we treat it as the destination rather than the outcome of meaningful living, we become trapped in a cycle that offers short-term highs and long-term emptiness. We chase the next thing and then the next, always hungry but never fed. And in doing so, we trade autonomy for appetite. What Huxley feared and what we must confront is that when pleasure becomes the central organizing principle of society, we lose our capacity to resist. Not because we're weak, but because we're too comfortable to care. We stop questioning, we stop pushing back, we stop reaching for something higher, and slowly, silently, we become prisoners of our own desires. So ask yourself, are you free or just entertained? Are you choosing your life, or is your life being chosen for you by the forces that profit from your passivity? If the answer unsettles you, good. That discomfort is the beginning of awakening, and awakening is the first step toward reclaiming your freedom from numbness to meaning, reclaiming your soul in a world of distraction. If you've made it this far, something inside you is already stirring. Maybe it's a quiet ache you've ignored for too long. Maybe it's a whisper you've tried to drown out with noise, scrolling, or endless motion. But now, in this moment, I want you to stop and listen, not to me, but to that deeper part of you that remembers what it means to be fully alive. Because here's the truth: the world will not hand you meaning. It will hand you distractions, it will flood you with options, with comfort, with pleasure, with everything except depth. And unless you actively resist that tide, you will wake up one day surrounded by everything you thought you wanted, yet feel utterly lost. Aldous Huxley didn't write Brave New World to entertain us, he wrote it to warn us, not about some dictator who would burn books, but about a society so drunk on pleasure that no one would bother reading them. A world so obsessed with feeling good that it forgets how to be good. And that's the danger we face. Not annihilation, but sedation. Not silence, but noise. Not suffering, but the kind of numbing comfort that slowly erodes the soul. But numbness isn't the end of the story. It's just a signal, a spiritual alarm clock. It tells us we've strayed too far from what matters, and the path back is not through more stimulation, it's through stillness, through discomfort, through self-confrontation. You must be willing to sit in the emptiness and ask yourself the questions no one else can answer. Who am I really? What do I value when no one is watching? What pain am I avoiding? And what truth is buried beneath it? These are not easy questions. They require courage. Because when you begin to strip away distraction, you will feel the full weight of your unprocessed life. The grief you buried, the dreams you abandoned, the parts of yourself you edited to be more palatable to others. But only by confronting that weight can you rise above it. Only by feeling it can you finally be free from it? And in that rawness, in that vulnerability, something incredible happens. You begin to remember what it means to feel deeply, to care deeply, to live authentically. Meaning is not found, it is made. And it is made through choices. Small, quiet, often painful choices. Choosing to turn off the noise and sit in silence. Choosing to pursue truth over comfort. Choosing to create rather than consume. Choosing to love without guarantee, to serve without recognition, to sacrifice without applause. These choices don't always feel good in the moment, but they build something far more lasting than pleasure. They build character, they build purpose, they build soul. You are not here to be entertained until you die. You are here to grow, to wrestle, to wake up. You are here to break the trance of modern life and remember that you are not just a bundle of impulses, but a being capable of immense depth, discipline, and devotion. But no one can force this awakening upon you. You must choose it. So I'll leave you with this. What if your deepest longing is not for more pleasure, but for more meaning? What if the life you're seeking isn't on the other side of more comfort, but on the other side of struggle, sacrifice, and soul? If that resonates, then maybe, just maybe, Huxley's warning has done its job. Not just to scare you, but to stir you. Not to depress, but to awaken. This is your call, not to run away from the world, but to engage it differently, to live not for pleasure, but for purpose, to reclaim your mind from the machinery of distraction, to reclaim your soul from the numbness of comfort, to say yes to a life that demands more of you, but ultimately gives you everything that matters, because in the end, pleasure fades, but meaning, that's what endures. That's what makes a life unforgettable, and that's what makes you truly undeniably alive.